Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on media, looking at forms of new media. When we discuss the media, we're referring to forms of mass communication between a source and its audience. We often refer to traditional and new media, and in this video we're going to focus on the different forms of new media in society. But first of all, we need to distinguish between traditional media and the new media. Traditional media sources rely upon analog processes, that is, processes that serve a singular function, such as television signals being sent from a transmitter to an aerial, which then arranges them into sound and images for people to watch. Traditional media also encompasses print media, which is produced and distributed for a single purpose, to inform its audience. New media, on the other hand, is transmitted digitally and has greater scope for multiple uses. This form of media arrived following the digital revolution, whereby signals were able to be transmitted using a digital signal, which gave them greater capacity to transmit material, interact with users, and offer greater scope through which people interact with the media. New media is a creation of the digital revolution that became the more dominant form of media transmission in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Traditional media sources such as television and radio had long relied upon the transmission of analog signals, which worked one way between the broadcaster and the audience. The broadcaster would transmit signals to a passive audience, one who would be unable to alter the signal provided. However, in the post-war years, digital technology started to be developed, but it wasn't until the latter part of the 20th century that machines capable of reading digital signals would become commonplace. Digital radios, home computers, and digital televisions were able to read digital signals and were able to send messages back to the broadcaster. This enabled people to have greater interactivity with the source of the media. It enabled them to choose optional programming, comment on media sources online, and eventually order consumer products and interact with services at the touch of a button. It also opened up new sources of media that in many cases replaced traditional forms of media. New media is the term given to these sources of media that have come about as a result of the digital revolution. Perhaps the most important innovation of the digital age is the creation of the World Wide Web that connects people through media devices, enabling greater connectivity with one another and greater access to information from computers in their own homes. Both radio and television switched to digital signals in the early part of this century, which allowed a greater amount of information to be broadcast, as digital signals were more capable of both transmitting and receiving large sources of information. This led to a growth in television and radio stations and made it cheaper to broadcast information. Other innovations included portable storage devices, which enabled people to save information from one source on disks and drives and move those to other sources. As the digital revolution evolved, there was a growth in streaming and on-demand services, which allowed individuals to choose where, when, and how they watched programming and films, rather than being reliant upon a broadcast schedule. Video game technology has increased, creating more lifelike and in-depth gaming experiences with expansive storylines that were dictated by in-game choices. And finally, the advent of smart technology, phones, televisions, and other appliances that allow people to connect their devices to each other and allow them to communicate with one another. The new media allows people to control their lives from the phone in their hands. Shopping, banking, relationships, entertainment, and how we learn have all been transformed by the use of new media. While devices were at the forefront of the digital revolution, much innovation in the new media comes from interactions online. The first social networks were developed in the early years of this century, with social networking sites such as MySpace and Bebo ultimately being replaced by Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Individuals can share information online through these platforms, but also through file sharing sites such as Dropbox and Google Drive, which enable people to work anywhere that they can connect to the internet and collaborate on projects with others. The new media has also generated online communities, from chat rooms to forums to sites such as Reddit and 4chan, where people can discuss their interests with people they've never met. The latest advances in virtual reality communities such as the metaverse, where people can live online, trade, change their appearance, and essentially exist in many ways in which they would do in real life. Furthermore, the new media allows individuals to create their own content. For example, video sites that enable people to host their own versions of television, such as YouTube. People can also create weblogs, video logs, podcasts, books, and digital media, as new media gives them the opportunity to do so and share it with the world. While new media is dominant, the traditional mass media remains, albeit in an evolved manner as a result of digitalisation. Books appear to have endured the growth of new media despite the advent of e-readers such as the Kindle, which can hold thousands of titles on a book-sized device. Newspapers and magazines have suffered somewhat though, despite their move to online formats. Print media has been in decline since the growth of smart technologies, with many leading magazines either closing or moving to digital-only platforms. Television, however, appears to have adapted far better, with streaming services being an increasingly common way to watch programming given the greater access to titles through providers such as BBC iPlayer, 4 On Demand, and subscription services such as Netflix. But what has been the impact of new media, and how can we link it to other areas of media study? The ownership of new media has seen the emergence of new technological giants, and this may impact on the future of how we receive information and the type of information that we receive. A second impact to consider is who accesses the new media, how do they access it, and how does it change our perceptions of the world around us? Another question that arises from the growth of new media is how has the new media changed our perception of marginalised groups in society? And has it done this for the better? That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video looking at media, focusing on forms of new media. Thanks for watching.